Hi all, let's look at another amazing game from the Norway 2017 Altibox tournament. So this is Caruana against Vichy Anand in round 6. So Fabiano Caruana, c4, the English opening. We have e5, knight c3, bishop b4. After knight d5, bishop c5, in an earlier round, I believe Vichy faced b4, but we see here knight f3. B4 in this position is the fourth most popular. Knight f3 is the main move. C6 is the main reply. And now d6, e3. Quite often queen e7 is played here, but also bishop b4 as played. d4, knight d7. Queen c2, knight g f6, a3. Black gives up the bishop, so it's a bit like a Nimzo Indian. Black castles. If he tries to win a pawn, it wouldn't be very clever here. White played bishop e2. Pardon me. Bishop e2 after castling. If he tries to take this pawn, you might have a quick question about this. It fails to knight e4 actually, hitting the queen, and wherever the queen goes, there's check here, winning that knight. Yeah, so knight e4 is actually opening up the diagonal. And then we can just take the knight. So that would be a poison pawn. Okay, so we have bishop e2, rook e8, and it looks as though black is set up now for playing a kind of it's kind of reverse French defense what white has after b4 e4, but white has the two bishops, but is that c1 bishop very good in this position? That's a big question. Black seems to have no real problems. Okay, he doesn't have his dark square bishop, but this is quite a formidable, aggressive pawn chain to have at this high level. a4, as if maybe the bishop's going to have this diagonal. But we see d takes c4, and Vichy's indicating he's interested in potentially making use of that d5 square as a nice blockade square. We see knight b6, knight a5, and the knight goes there with tempo, and this position is pretty annoying for white. This bishop, if it's got no real scope, it doesn't really matter, it seems, that black has the bishop pair here. h3, because actually bishop g4 is positionally interesting. If white doesn't play h3, let's have a quick look. Bishop g4, it seems as though this is quite difficult for white. You can never play f3 because we can take there, and that is weak, and we're just winning material. And what does black actually play? If he allows this loss of the bishop pair, this position is quite pleasant for black. It's quite nice for black. So yeah, the bishop pair is trying to be maintained, at least with h3. We have rook e6, as though the rook might swing to the king side later. Bishop a3. You might think, hold on, wasn't that pawn... Sorry. Anyway, so bishop a3 supports that pawn even more. a6. And we see knight b3 now. Interesting knight b3, because on c5 you would think it's like kickable with b6 at some point later, and you might therefore think knight c4. However, knight c4 promises like the e5 square. However, knight e8 means the knight can also be kicked from here, for example, like this. In fact, b5 encouraging knight e5. Where else? This is looking passive. And in fact, rook h6. It looks as though with bishop takes h3 to follow, not just passive here, but fatal. If bishop takes h3 is allowed, it's a really difficult position. I'll give you an example here, prepared earlier. f4, bishop takes h3. This position is just basically losing for black. It's just too much pressure to bear there. Say this position, there's a threat now. Well, there's multiple threats. But yeah, the black's just... it's got so much play here. So yeah, the knight going to c4 maybe isn't entirely clever here. The other aspect, just to briefly touch on here, on knight e5, f6, and disposition can actually quickly turn out to be quite good for black, even if c6 sometimes drops. There's knight c4 hitting the rook there, and if rook takes, knight takes queen, so bishop takes, rook takes c6 is winning material. So what does actually white do here? If he has to sack the exchange, black is doing well here. So yeah, it seems you might have wondered why not knight c4. So let's see, knight e8, and again this rook's kind of really dangerous, ready to destroy the king position if white castles kingside. So we see white actually preparing to castle on the queen side. First, making sure b6 is not possible here without ab. But now, there's battery threats against h3. It seems actually, even though the king is preparing to castle queenside, he didn't castle queenside here. This queen c2, if he castles queenside here, yeah, there might be some trouble brewing actually with b6. Yeah, queen c2, and now castling queenside. Now b6 might not be a huge trouble here to try and bust things open. White could take here, he's got pressure on c6, and it's not entirely clear, but even this position, is dangerous for white, it seems. Yeah, even this way of playing the position is dangerous. It has to be said, even if a6 drops. But that's not the way it was played. Actually, black plays a little bit on this side of the board, looking at h3. Now we see the bishop dropping back. f5, yeah, black's playing on this side of the board, just kind of ignoring the queen side. Takes. Now, if bishop takes, then there's the skewer, bishop h5. So this is avoided with this move order with rook f6 to get the pawn more safely. So bishop takes f5, and black's still better. He's playing on that side of the board, and he's better on this side of the board, in fact. We see rook g6 just volunteering an exchange of rooks to kind of weaken white over here on white's king side. This, yeah, it's not opening up files against the king, that's for sure. And after bishop g4, black is trying to weaken these light squares now. Blocks the pawn, and this means actually bishop h5 is starting to be looking good as well sometimes. And we have g4, and now rook f5, as though, yeah, this is getting really dangerous. We have queen f8 here. Queen takes h6, winning a pawn there. So yeah, black is terrorizing this side of the board. Check, yeah, swapping like a piece swap there. But in fact, now black very rapidly establishes from this side of the board a mating attack after bishop e2. The light squares are incredibly weak here. So weak that Fabiano resigned. As an example, well, queen takes, we can just win the queen. Not very good. But say king a3, then bishop c4, and we're just threatening queen d3, kind of mating. With queen b3 next, if king a4. And if bishop c3, queen b1 is kind of mating. It's staggering, isn't it? How rapid this movement from the king side to black's king is. So white clearly overextended. Yeah, provoked to overextend there. And it's just fatally weak. The king safety is just being shot to pieces in that final position after bishop e2. You might think, was this a trap, by the way? Let's have a look at this position before bishop e2, which is very, very clear. If queen takes d5, and actually, technically, the engines have this as equal. So I think Fabiano would have liked this continuation a lot more. With queen e5, there might even be, potentially, as well as the immediate threat on c7. There's essentially d5 coming up, and that would be saving white, just be like perpetual. But as it is, yeah, so queen takes f2 is a bit of a waste of time compared to what one can do with tempo gains, which is to mate the white king. And also, of course, stopping immediately queen takes d5 for any ideas of opening up the diagonal. So yeah, bishop e2, a very interesting game, really. Winning with black. Viswanathan winning with black here. Giving white voluntarily the bishop pair, knowing that he sets up a blockade on d5, and he can play on this side of the board, and then very, very rapidly get to white's king after. Well, maybe he didn't know that all in advance, but the game looks pretty elegant how it was played. There were also many variations where it was looking as if the rook was going to be trapped. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.